By late October 1962, the high-altitude frontier between India and China was collapsing. Indian border posts were rapidly falling to Chinese advances in freezing conditions. The Chinese objective was clear: break through the mountain defenses and capture the city of Leh. Taking Leh meant securing the ultimate strategic prize: complete access to the entirety of the Ladakh region. This topographic map shows the layout of the region, detailing Leh in the west, Chushul in the center, and the connecting route via the Changla Pass. The Chushul Valley acted as the final lock on the door to Leh. It held two strategic assets: an all-weather airstrip and a position sitting squarely astride the second main route into Tibet. With the northern defenses already overrun by October 22nd, the survival of this specific 25-mile stretch of sand and rock poses a critical question. How did Chushul manage to break the relentless pattern of the Chinese advance? The survival of Chushul was the direct result of a total transition in Indian strategy, a shift from political posturing to a defense defined by engineering and concentration. Leading up to the conflict, India relied on what was known as the forward policy. This strategy involved deploying small, isolated platoons across the border. These posts were never meant to serve as military roadblocks capable of halting an army. They were political tripwires meant to assert territorial claims. When the fighting escalated in late October, the fatal flaw of this policy was exposed. Isolated and completely unsupported, these outposts were systematically surrounded and dismantled by superior Chinese troop concentrations. Recognizing the imminent threat to Leh, the Indian Army sent the 114 Infantry Brigade into Chushul. Their explicit orders were to abandon the dispersed posture and form a concentrated, unified defensive stand. They understood that political presence could not substitute for firepower. Survival required a doctrinally sound, mutually supported defense. Preparing that defense meant contending with the extreme environment of the Chushul Valley itself. It is a narrow, sandy basin, roughly 25 miles long and 4 miles wide, sitting at a baseline altitude of 14,230 feet and flanked by jagged peaks rising over 19,000 feet. This hand-drawn map highlights the unimpeded logistical advantage held by the Chinese. Notice the Spangor Gap and the direct, motorable road leading in from Ladakh. This infrastructure allowed them to funnel heavy artillery and tanks right to the valley's edge. Facing this armored threat, Brigade 1114 had to make a choice. If you look at the central airfield on the map, the defenders could retreat to the safer heights on the west side of Chushul, but that meant surrendering the runway. Alternatively, they could garrison the exposed eastern heights, specifically Gurung Hill, Magar Hill, and Razong La, to form a physical shield for the airstrip. In high-altitude warfare, terrain dictates the operational limits. Garrisoning the eastern heights was the only viable method to preserve the valley's center of gravity. The Indian command immediately began organizing the high ground. They deployed the 1/8 Gorkha Rifles onto Gurung Hill, directly overlooking the Spangor Gap, and placed a company of 13 Kuman 19 miles south on Razong La. Under the direction of Brigadier Tian Reina, troops augmented these positions with specific engineering multipliers. They supervised the mining of every viable approach route for Chinese armor and established overlapping fields of fire for their 106mm recoilless guns to create a lethal kill box. They also integrated an extensive tactical deception network. The defenders constructed dummy artillery pieces and fake fuel dumps and even disguised old bulldozers to look like tanks, scattering them widely around the central airstrip zone. Through precise engineering and calculated deception, they converted a vulnerable, static line into a resilient, depth-layered network explicitly designed to absorb and redirect the weight of the coming assault. That weight arrived at 0435 hours on November 18th. The freezing morning was broken by an intense Chinese artillery bombardment. The initial barrage proved the value of the deception network. The Chinese expended heavy ammunition obliterating dummy positions, leaving the actual Indian defenses largely intact. This tactical sketch illustrates the maneuver. The Chinese launched a battalion-strength assault directly into the Indian platoons holding Gurung Hill. But Indian forward observers directed highly accurate counter-battery fire, catching the advancing troops in the open and stalling their momentum. These field guns were reinforced by a troop of AMX-13 tanks, operating at an extreme altitude. The cold was so severe that automatic loading gears froze, requiring crews to manually load high-explosive shells into the advancing lines. By strictly coordinating infantry positions, forward artillery, and armored support, the defenders generated a force multiplier effect, capable of shattering numerical superiority. Yet the Chinese possessed immense numerical depth. Despite heavy casualties, fresh waves of infantry pressed forward through the thick, freezing fog. Recognizing the overwhelming numbers, the Indian command executed a deliberate tactical withdrawal from the forward positions on November 19th. Falling back to the camel's back feature was a calculated decision to preserve their remaining combat force, rather than a disorganized rout. Ultimately, the Chinese secured the high ridges they targeted, but they entirely failed to achieve their primary operational goal, capturing the Chushul airfield. Shortly after the engagements at Gurung Hill and Razang La, the Chinese declared a unilateral ceasefire. In attritional defensive warfare, holding a specific rock is secondary. The true objective is breaking the enemy's momentum and bleeding their ability to fight. The Battle of Chushul provides a direct comparison of two operational models. On one side, the failed model of scattered political outposts. On the other, the interlocking prepared defense. The 114 Infantry Brigade proved definitively that a numerically superior force could be stalled and its capacity drained when forced into a well-designed choke point. Mountains alone do not stop armies. It is the strict geometric alignment of manpower, artillery, and logistics that ultimately converts difficult terrain into combat power.